So we have something new before the break. We've got a few extra minutes. We're actually going to stop, I guess, 5 minutes early before the break. But we have something new that we have never tried before. So Harlan Carvey, who is a longtime OSDFCon attendee and speaker and longtime DFIR author, offered to record a video of lessons learned and kind of funny stories from the trenches. So he's recorded that, and that will be playing for, I think it's 12 minutes as part of that break. So you will still have some time afterwards if you want to listen to that, and then still grab a water, coffee, whatever you're drinking at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We don't judge. So that will be here. We will come back at 4:30 Eastern time from the final 2 talks of the day. So thank you very much, and take it over, Harlan.
Hey everybody, my name is Harlan Carvey, and I'm here to share a couple of hopefully humorous events. Hopefully you'll find them humorous. I can't really say at the time that they were humorous when they happened, but as most of you, some of you may be aware, there's a military adage that no plane survives contact with the enemy. This is equally true for incident response. Many times, I go on site, we get a call, and either leave the next day, or sometimes there were more than a few times when I would leave that night and actually have to order my plane ticket in the cab on the way to the airport. And I can remember 2 times specifically that I showed up before the ticket had hit the system. So I had to wait in the lobby of Dulles Airport for my ticket to actually hit before I could actually get on the plane. So anyway, the whole point of this is that there's a lot that happens during an incident response engagement that is very high stress, it's very tense, and there's a lot of negative feelings involved, generally speaking. And many times there's a lot of things that happen that are really pretty funny. We can laugh about him at the time. Probably not a good idea to laugh about him at the time because people won't think you're taking things seriously. So I wanted to share a couple of vignettes from my experience, and I do have a bit of a cue card here, so I'll be glancing at it. There was one time I was doing PCI engagements, and I won't admit this outside of this room, but I was certified to do PCI forensic audits, and this is when Chris Pogue and I were working at IBM together, and I was called on site to a hospitality organization that had to have a PCI investigation performed. So I left on a Sunday night, and I arrived at the location Sunday night, and went on site first thing Monday morning, fresh and ready to go, only to find out that the admin who was supposed to be there, the only person who had the keys to allow me into the back office in order to begin my investigation, was out getting a vasectomy. Yes, you heard that right. I didn't stutter. He was out getting a vasectomy. So I had to wait for a full day and a half. So around lunchtime on Tuesday, this guy came walking in, and I could tell it was the admin without even, he didn't have a shirt on that said, "I'm the network admin." Nobody pointed at him. He was just the guy that was walking across the lobby with a limp. So I waited for him to shuffle over to the back office door and unlock it for me so I could start my work. So this is one of those, hey, we got to get you on site immediately. We need this work done. And for those of you that have ever done a PCI forensic engagement, you know that there are very stringent time limits for reporting. I think at the time that I was doing it, the first initial report had to be in to the PCI council, who at the time was Visa. Had to be into the PCI council within 5 days of going on site. So to have to sit there and wait and twiddle my thumbs for a day and a half really kind of made things tense. But it was a good chuckle when the guy finally showed up. There was another incident that I was called on site for, and another analyst and I showed up. I originally showed up on a Thursday afternoon. I left the site to go pick up another analyst from the local airport, and we arrived back on site to continue work at 7:30 that evening. And we worked straight through for 22 continuous hours. The location was in Washington, D.C., so trying to leave Washington, D.C. at 5:30 on a Friday night is very, very difficult. But what was really humorous about this particular engagement was while we were doing analysis, we wanted to take a break every now and then. You maybe take a restroom break or go get some water or something. The entire building was shut down. I mean, we're talking 11:30, midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. So we went into Survivor Man mode. If you've ever seen the Survivor shows with Les Stroud, we were rooting through people's desks looking for crackers or snacks or anything that we could find. It was less. What's the other guy's name? It was less Bear Grylls. I mean, we weren't eating grubs and disgusting things. We were actually looking for something that was edible. So, by rooting through people's desks. So that was, we were very careful. Obviously we weren't flipping keyboards over looking for passwords. But in that particular engagement, we did go hunting, foraging afar, if you will. So. There's been a couple of times when I've gone on site to large data centers or large-ish data centers, very, very early on when I was doing incident response around 2005, 2006. There were a couple of instances where I would go into the data center and I couldn't find the system involved to do any sort of collection from. And in the case of live systems, you're generally not going to perform a full acquisition, like take the server, shut the server down, take it out of the rack, pull the hard drive or hard drives, especially if it's a RAID array, out of the rack and do an acquisition. So what we were trying to do was run a series of tools, maybe even a batch file off of a CD or some sort of external media to collect information from the systems. So at one point, I remember going into this data center, and we located the system via the management console, which was Dameware at the time. And I was having the IT admin had all the doors in the cages open, and I had the IT admin open the CD-ROM tray of the system we were looking for, and I'd run up and down the aisle trying to find which server had the CD-ROM tray open. Interestingly enough, we had to do this because the systems themselves weren't labeled, and they weren't. Nobody had a mapping of IP address to systems to physical location. As it was, we realized we were in the prod section, and nobody had any in this particular engagement, which was not unlike other engagements. Nobody had a listing of which systems were prod and which systems were dev. So we had to go do the same thing all over again in the dev room for each individual system. Now, I don't know if it was an issue with Dameware or if it was an issue with the systems themselves not being in the room, but there were more than a few systems that we couldn't find using this method. There were other times when we would go on site. One time in particular, I flew out on a Friday night. I got a call that I had to leave probably about 4:30 in the afternoon. I actually arrived on site at about 10:30 at night and went to the data center. It was a Friday night, and it happened to be November during the prom season. I thought this is kind of an interesting memory because as I was walking from the building over to the data center, it was very, very cold. It was Minnesota, very, very cold. I was cold. I had a heavy jacket on, and I had the added bonus of generating body heat by dragging all my equipment with me. And yet there were young people wandering around in dresses and tuxedos with no jackets on because it was prom season. I was pretty cold. In that particular instance, and as this has happened several times before, we would want to do a live acquisition from some servers. And we couldn't take these systems offline. We couldn't take the systems down, so we had to do some sort of live acquisition. In some cases, we would actually do a live acquisition of the hard drive itself. So do a physical acquisition, but do it live. And for some of these servers, it turns out they had USB 1 attachments. And if you've ever experienced that, you remember initiating FTK Imager or whatever tool you would want to use, and you would see the imaging time instead of increasing slightly and then reaching a steady point like 4 hours or 6 hours, whatever the case may be. For systems with USB 1, you'd see the imaging go from 4.5 hours to 7 hours to 9 hours to 13 hours, and just keep climbing. So what we would have to do is find another system on the same subnet with USB 2, plug in an external drive to that, map a drive to the system we wanted to image, and then acquire over the network. And when we were doing this, we would put a lot of signage over the systems. We used a lot of paper, a lot of tape, and a lot of magic marker. In case of fire call, put my phone number on it. I didn't want to sit there and have to walk around the data center all night long, especially if it was going to take 10, 12, or 15 hours to perform the acquisitions. I'd rather just get them set up and get them going and return later when they were completed. But that required that we put a lot of signage to the point where anybody that was going to come in and shut the systems off or unplug anything because they just saw something unusual and felt they should unplug it, we would put such an obstacle in their way that they would at least have to recognize, well, wait a minute, I've just unwrapped a Christmas present that's been wrapped 3 or 4 times. Maybe I should stop and think about what I'm doing. So in those cases, we like I said, a lot of paper, a lot of tape, some chairs, some rolling chairs, things like that. So let's see. There was a couple of other vignettes, if you will. There was a tabletop exercise that I was working with a customer on one point. And as part of the tabletop exercise, we reached out to the network administrator and we asked him, said, hey, can we get the firewall logs for this time period? And he said, sure, not a problem. Have them to you in 10 minutes. 15 minutes went by, half an hour went by, 3 hours went by. So later in the afternoon, we gave him a call and said, hey, where are those firewall logs? He says, oh, I thought it was an exercise. And we said, yes, it is, but we'd still like the firewall logs. Come find out, he had no idea where the firewall logs were. We couldn't find them. Also on that tabletop exercise, the first thing we did is we set up the scenario and we said, okay, here's what's happening. There's data on the network, there's data on systems, and we want you to go ahead and initiate your incident response plan. And then the very first thing we did after that was we killed off the primary administrator, the one that knew how to do everything. And that really showed some gaps in their incident response. But I think more so was the system administrator, the network administrator that had no idea what the firewall logs were, even though he said he'd get them to us in 10 minutes. And I guess finally, another sort of humorous event, we were doing a large in the sense of very visible within the organization, incident response, a lot of visibility all the way up through the C-suites. And we found a primary system that was generating syslog. And we said, hey, this is great. We know that syslog is going someplace. And we're going to go find that system and collect those syslogs, and it'll really, really aid us in our investigation. Come find out, the syslog server had been decommissioned 2 years prior. So there were devices spewing syslog out onto the network with it going nowhere. So hopefully this will give you some idea of some of the very humorous incidents that you can and will run into. I'm sure that at the time, some of these instances, or if other individuals or analysts ran into these situations that might, under the circumstances, there's a lot of tension and a lot of negative feelings. It might not be so funny at the time. It may be more humorous years later, but sometimes it's just you just got to maintain your sense of humor, and a lot of these things end up being pretty funny. So anyway, good luck to everybody, and hey, we'll see you out there. Thanks a lot.